So the title of this call is Just Ask. Are we asking the right questions? And I think that this is really probably good timing for everybody in our business, because we always have to ask questions that lead to action. There's an old saying that goes like this. It says, you never know until you ask. And there's nothing could be more true, Unless you ask a question, you never go anywhere, right? There's no such thing as a right or wrong question in life, at least in my opinion. Sometimes they're asked at the wrong time, for instance, but there's no such thing as a stupid question or a bad question in life. It's by asking questions that we learn. Think about a child and the gazillion questions they'll ask you to sometimes drive you to drink with all the questions because they're so inquisitive. They're so ready to learn. And in our business, it's the same thing. By asking questions, we learn. I find sometimes people, I say they try to fake it. They like to pretend they have answers. They like to pretend they don't have any questions. But in reality, they have a whole lot of questions. And unless they ask them, they can't be addressed. They can't learn. It's by asking questions that we grow. And by asking questions, we can make our plans and we can produce results in our business. Asking questions in business is mandatory for success. You just can't go out and do business and not learn to ask questions and ask the right questions. And shying away from asking those tough questions is always going to lead to failure. Mostly because we never get the information we need to move forward. We have to just ask. As I was preparing some notes for this, I was thinking about some things in life. If you don't, guys, if you never ask a woman out on a date, you aren't going on a date. If you never ask her to marry you, y'all aren't getting married. Ladies, if we had a dinner party at our house and we never invited anybody, nobody's going to show up. We have to get out and ask questions. Unless we ask questions, the questions that we really need answers to, we cannot succeed. We can't move forward. We have to just ask. So why aren't we asking? Well, some people don't understand what we're trying to find out to begin with. So they don't even know because they don't know what we're trying to find out. They don't know what question to ask. But in reality, most are afraid to ask them. It's either insecurity, they really don't have a firm grasp and security, feel confident, in other words, about what they're doing and what they're trying to find out, or they might have a fear of rejection. They might have a fear of what people might think of them. What if I ask it wrong? Or what if they think I'm being pushy? Or what if they think I'm trying to sell them? All those things that run through our minds. The fear of asking the wrong question. Again, we need to build our confidence, or fear that you'll have to take the next step. And honestly, that's a big one, and that's why we see so many people fail in the follow-up. Fortune is in the follow-up, and so often we never make it to that follow-up because we're fearful of what that next step should be. So fear is a whole topic for another day. But the main reason people don't ask and they don't follow up, it all comes down to fear. Will you address your fears? You got to be honest with yourself. I don't know what you're afraid of. I mean, I can kind of look out there and see what things are being done and not being done and make my own assumptions. But I can't get inside your head and your heart and know what you're afraid of. You're afraid of something if you're not taking action. So will you address those fears? And knowledge builds confidence. Again, it's kind of like going back to a child. You'll see them once they get questions answered and they learn how to do something, they're taught how to do something, they ask and inquire, they build confidence. And it's trial and error that builds perfection. Every time in life, in business, in relationships, in everything in your life. It has to go with trial and error. I'm known for saying to people, stop getting ready to do something. At some point, you just have to get out there and do it. At some point, you guys know my story and how I had to try to overcome my fear. And it was fear of public speaking. I mean, and there, at some point, no matter what I learned with Dale Carnegie, no matter how hard I tried, I had to get up there and I had to do it. And guess what? I didn't get up there with all the skills and do it with perfection. I floundered around just like you will. I remember the first auction I did. My goodness, I had been in the auction business already for like 2.5 years before I went to auction school and had to take the podium and the mic. I still remember that. You would think from looking and then educating and then practicing, that I would just be, it would be a piece of cake to get up there and do my first auction. I still remember what that was like. It was trial and error. I wasn't good at it, but I got back up and I got back up and I got back up until I perfected it. And guess what, guys? You're not going to do anything in life successfully unless you're willing to fail and get back up. Think about a child riding a bike or a toddler learning to walk. I mean, they stumble, they fall, they crash that bike, and thank God for helmets, and they get on, and they get on, and they get on until they perfect it. You have no option but to do the same thing. So instead of putting in the effort to grow ourselves, what we often do is we run from the responsibility, and we refuse to ask the right questions. How in the world can any of us succeed like that? And the answer to that is we can't. So what questions do we ask? Well, if you're stuck in technology mode, if you're still where science is your main focus, you'll struggle to find the right question to ask every single time. Why? Because you'll be talking over the heads of most of your prospects, and you're going to leave them in the dust. You cannot take a very short period of time with people as you're trying to get them on board to hearing you and just flood them with things that leave them glazed over like a deer with the headlights. So if you're still stuck in that mode, you're not going to move forward. You'll overlook our purpose and our mission, spreading true health globally with compassion. So really, the first and the most important question is actually directed at you. What business are you in? I think a lot of us struggle with that. Some of us in the beginning, some of us have gained our confidence in knowing what we're doing, and we know that 30-second elevator speech. But I'll tell you a couple things that you're not in. You're not in the water business. You're not in the healthcare business. You're not in the healing business. You're not in the filter business. You're not in the franchise business. So what business are you in? You've got to figure that out. It all comes back down to compassion. What business are you in? There's some questions that we don't want to ask as we're moving forward. And one of those questions is, do you have time? Guys, you don't want to ask questions that are so easily put off. So if you ask somebody, do you have time? It's so easy to say, actually, no, I don't really have time at all. You don't want to say, can we meet? It's so easy to say, well, I'll give you a call. Give me your card. I'll let you know. You don't want to say, would you like to see a demo? Would you be interested in free water? What do you think? You don't want to ask open-ended questions that are so easily to dismiss you. So, in this example, one thing you might want to say is, I'd love to get together with you. I'm available Wednesday or Thursday from 12 to 3. Which one works for you? You take command of it. In other words, you're still asking a question. You're still extending courtesy, but you don't ask questions where you're so set up for failure. Would you like to see a demo? Actually, no. I think I saw one online. Well, it really wouldn't make the difference. A demo always makes a difference. So you take the bull by the horn. And you just say, I'd like to come to your house and show you a demo. Again, I'm available Wednesday and Thursday from 12 to 3. Which one works? You don't ask questions where they can dismiss you. So first out of the way, it's just an example of some things that we don't want to ask. Don't set yourself up, but you don't know till you ask, do you? We need to determine the needs of the audience. That's the primary goal in any business on the planet. Brick and mortar businesses, for instance, they'll study demographics and they conduct traffic reports. They look at the buying habits of their audience and they look at the income brackets of those they're trying to attract. They look at a whole lot of stuff. You don't see them just going out blindly, signing a lease for brick and mortar that costs them an arm and a leg, and they don't know anything about anything. They usually have a pretty good idea of who the audience is, how much the audience makes, what price point is a good point for that audience. They know a lot. So you can't grow your business either without focusing on your audience. And you can't determine what your audience needs unless you look for answers. They're not just going to come up and throw them at you, guys. Answers will only come when you ask the right questions. Answer will only be understood when we learn to shut up and listen. I think in life, especially, you can imagine with my personality, I'm a chatterbox, right? It's the hardest thing in the world to sit there sometimes and ask a question and wait for the answer. But I'm also very compassionate. I love life and I love people. And so, in fact, some people on this call, they tease me often and say, why do you get people to tell you everything? Why? Because I care about them and I look at them and I listen to them and I shut up. And so solutions can only be proposed, guys, when we understand the needs. You can't ask a question or two and find a solution. You got to really dig deep, and you've got to find out what's in their life. We often say people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And I got to tell you something. That's probably one of the most abused and misunderstood statements that we use. How do people know that we care? Well, it's not because you're talking science to them. And you might tell yourself that, well, I'm trying to educate them. I want them to know. It's not because you're pouring water all over them. I mean, come on, most of the time they don't even know what that's about. It's not because you do a really good demo for them. it's not because, well, you told them what was good for them. Come on, guys, they don't know that you care unless you spend time with them. You give them your time and your attention. You give them a piece of your life. You ask questions and you listen as they share life with you. And it's through that process that you learn about them. And then you're able to determine what their needs are. And until then, it's just a shot in the dark. So, you can't be, throwing water at people that are thinking about money, etc. You don't know what they need unless you're willing to take the time. I got to tell you something. I think there are people who don't want to ask questions. They don't want to spend the time. Maybe they don't care at all. But a lot of times, you know what? They don't want that flip back on them. They don't want to talk about their life. So sometimes there's a little bit of work that needs to go on within us. So when someone asks about you, your life, your family, your work, your hobbies, most of us feel like they care. Wow, great conversation, and you like to talk about yourself. That's human nature. So, if that's not the case with you, there might be a deeper problem within you that needs to be addressed. If you've got problems where you've seen adversity and you've seen trials and you just don't want to share anything with anybody, you don't necessarily have to dig that deep and share the innermost part of you or your problems, but you got to be asking questions. So if you don't ask questions because you don't want to be asked questions, you got to work your way through that. You've got to begin with you and start working on you to a point where you can do this. You do this whole process of asking questions and maybe being asked some back. And then we need to find a need and fill it. So we've asked some questions, we've talked with them, we've gotten to know them, we hear a little bit about their life. You ought to be able to zero in on what their needs are. So when you find a need, then you can fill it. So unless you take the time to learn more about them, you don't have any idea what needs they have. You're guessing. You're throwing water at people, and it doesn't make any sense to try to recruit someone into our business when they're too sick to think. All they can think about is how bad they feel. Making money is not even on their radar, guys. They're worried about it. They don't feel good. And if you've ever think about the sickest moment in your life, whether it was just that, you've dealt with the flu or you've had some chronic disease. Did you think, would you want to talk about money, have somebody bugging you about a business? The answer to that's no. So if you ever want any hope of that person anywhere in your relationship with them to talk about money, you need to understand to address their real needs first, and the rest can come in the process. Does it make any sense to be pouring water samples on people when all they can think about is how broke they are? Guys, I've been broke, okay? I've lived in cars. I know what that is. It is so consuming to not have enough money. So does it make sense that you're going to say, oh, well, just let me give you some water, and you start throwing water on them, and improving their health is the last thing on their mind. I've known people, chronically ill people, and I don't even know how they did it, but they got their tails out of bed and they got to work. They were so worried about money in their life that they couldn't even take a sick day. Okay, you've got to understand where they're coming from. Otherwise, it's fruitless. You need to find out what their needs are, and then you need to start offering solutions from that point. You don't just go in and offer what makes you tick. You don't just go in and offer what got you on board. You have to go in, find the need, figure out where those needs are, and then start filling it. And it could be as simple as you're learning about their life, you're hearing about what's going on, and when you see that need, you could say something as simple as, I think I can help you with that. What a compassionate thing to say. And if somebody's sharing their heart with you and they're saying, oh, I'm so sick, and I, this and that, and you just say to them very kindly, after you've had a little bit of a conversation with them, by the way, I think I can help you with that. They think you're kind, they see your compassion, they see your heart, and they'll most likely say, oh, really, how would you do that? You've got to get inside of the need and quit making your own assumptions. Get yourself out of the equation. Again, it doesn't matter. If you had a turnaround in our business with your health, I don't mean everybody's going to be interested in that. In fact, I don't know. Maybe it's because I have such a focus on the money part that I think at least the people I encounter, so many people, they could give a rip about their health, whether they have it or not. They just like, and I don't know, they're like little hamsters on a wheel, and they don't necessarily want to learn about health. And again, that could just be me. But we've got to find the need. Stop talking about nonsense in a direction that they're not interested in. You'll never know what they need unless you take the time to find out what's going on in their life. Examples of leading questions, and this could go on. This could be a 2-week call if you just gave examples, some leading questions. But one thing is, what do you do for a living? Find out, and do you like it? You know, I just had this similar conversation, you know, about a week ago. I was talking to somebody, hey man, what do you do for a living? And they were telling me, and I said, well, do you like it? Oh my goodness, it was probably an hour conversation on how much they didn't like it, you know, or you could say, how long you been doing that? What do you do for fun? You know, where did you go on vacation this year? Boy, you talk about a leading question. Guess what, folks? Most people didn't. Most people couldn't afford to. You know, and when they say, I can't even remember the last vacation I went on, it's a real good indicator to you. They probably need to make a little bit more money and have a little bit more freedom. How's your health? Do you find time to exercise? Is having good health a priority for you? Are you open ways to improve that health? Do you look for ways to make extra money? Do you drink water? What's that you're drinking? That's a Grandma Edma line, right? What's that you're drinking? Have you checked out the new farmer's market? You know, you do things like that, you find out, well, yeah, I checked it out, or no, I don't care about any of that stuff. You'll find out, are they interested in health? Do they look for healthy options? This list could go on and on and on, but maybe you can take this short list and just try to visualize what kind of questions could you have asked that last person you met with? What kind of leading questions to find out more about what's going on in their life? Because again, guys, we're in the compassion business. You got to ask a few questions. And then the toughest question of all, there is no way around asking somebody the most difficult question, and that's the purchase question. And we run from that. Oh my goodness, it just sometimes makes me laugh at how much people run from that. But when's the last time you bought something significant, you know, maybe a house or a car in your life, and nobody asked you if you wanted to buy? I mean, come on, guys. You have never moved forward with a big acquisition, and I'm sorry, I do think this is a big financial step for most people. You never bought anything without somebody saying, are you ready? You know, when, for instance, in real estate, if you show excitement, if you have somebody showing you houses and you show excitement over one, say, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful, I love this house, your realtor asks you if you're ready to write a contract. You are never going to knock around looking at your dream house and not being asked that question. But you know what else? You're probably never going to buy. Because people, human nature, we need that prompting, right? When you test drive a car and you come back and say, oh my gosh, it handles so great, I love that car, salesman's going to invite you inside and to see how they can get you in that car. You ready to drive it home today? They're going to ask things like that because people need prompting. When I share my faith, it comes to a point where I have to ask the leading question. Would you like to have what I have? Would you like to be introduced to my God? Would you like to? Most people would never say, hey, excuse me, could I buy this house? Excuse me, you know, could you tell me about your God? It doesn't happen that way. Most people, human nature is they do nothing unless they're prompted forward. That's human nature. So asking for the sale, if you will, is not optional. If you don't ask, you can't succeed. And furthermore, unless you ask, unless you care about them enough, you know, they're never going to move forward. So how are you going to move in your business? How are you going to take the next step? How are you going to see success unless you're willing to ask some tough questions? And so, you know, in reality, we really have come full circle. It always comes back to compassion. If you don't have this business from your head to your heart, you got a little work to do. You can't, I'm convinced you can't succeed in this business until it gets from your head to your heart, because we're in the compassion business. If you believe in what you have, then you want to share it to help another person. You're not sharing it to make a sale. When you ask those leading tough questions, you're not, hopefully, asking those questions just to go to the bank. You're asking it because you know, you believe in what you have, and you know you have a solution, and because you care about them, you want them on board with that solution. That's why you ask the leading questions. If you care about them, you make it your mission to help them. So asking for the sale, you know, if you will, it is a way that we're able to help them move forward. It's not that we're shoving it down their throats, and that's what so many people use as an excuse. I don't want to bug them. I don't want them to think I'm trying to sell them something. You know, I don't want to shove it down their throats. So let me tell you something. You all on this line, at least most of you, know my faith. And you can rest assured, when I'm sharing my faith with somebody who doesn't know my faith, I am asking the leading questions. I don't worry about what if they think I'm being pushy, what if they think I'm shoving it down their throats. You know why? Because I know what I have, and I know that what I have, they need. And so there's no way around it. I'm not asking to be pushy or offensive. I'm asking because I care. And you know, in life, it always comes down to also, it's not what we say, it's how we say it. So there's a way to ask these questions, these leading questions, these difficult questions. We talked last week about, the financing question. You've got to ask people how their credit is and do they need financing. We've got to learn to ask those leading and sometimes difficult questions. But when we do it with the right heart, guess what? We see success. I often talk about real estate because I spent 18 years in that, and I mentioned before a book called the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, I think, is something like that. It was a Keller Williams book. But really, over and over, you would see the most successful people in that world would always say to you, we didn't count our money. We didn't look at the money. A transaction to them was not about, ooh, look at this commission check. The transaction was all about doing the right thing. And when we do the right thing in life, and we do the right thing in business, we will always see success. So, you've got to be willing to ask the right questions and have the right motives. So are you doing it? Are you even doing that in your life at all? And so that's the message today, is asking those questions, difficult questions, tough questions, questions that might make you feel uncomfortable, and questions that you're afraid will make somebody else feel uncomfortable. But if you want to do this business, if you want this mission to be your source of income, there's no way around it. You're going to have to ask some difficult questions. So I'm opening it up now for anybody that has a question or might have a comment about the content of this call, and maybe there's some things that we can talk about, ways that we can help one another. If you feel have a question and you'd like to come online, just raise your hand and I will be opening up the line as I see you guys, and we'll see if we can get some questions asked and answered and some comments. So I'm looking at the screen now, a whole bunch of people out there, so bear with me as I scroll through here, see if I can't find some hands. I see Pam Kaminsky's hands up, and Pam, you are unmuted.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and yes, thank you.
Okay, great. This was wonderful for me, Lynn. As you know, I'm still a newbie and learning the right questions and not to be afraid to ask, as you have found out. I'm not afraid to call you and say, hey, I have some questions.
Right.
So this is terrific for anybody that, is afraid to ask the questions. It's quite easy to do, and Lynn just teaches it so well on how to do that. I appreciate this webinar. This is terrific.
Well, thank you so much, Pam. You're always an encourager, and that's really a good sign of someone who wants to learn when they're willing to ask those questions. Again, if you're dealing with your sponsor or a leader or your mentor, your accountability partner or whatever, I mean, you got to feel free to ask questions. There's nothing shameful in not having the answers. But you're never going to get the answers unless you're willing to ask the questions. So it's good for all of us in our business, in our world, in our relationships, in every aspect of life. We've got to be willing to grow and to learn, and we do that by asking questions. In our business, we do that so that we'll lead to success. Anybody else out there? Comments, questions, anything you'd like to share with us today before we conclude the call? Anybody at all? You just go to the right side of your screen. There's a panel, and you click to raise your hand, and I'll unmute you at that point. Looks like it's hard for me to, well, actually I can see. We have 88 people on the call, a lot of quiet people on this call, and that's quite all right. You're not, obligated to pipe in at all, but I do want to be sure that, we're able to address anything that might come down the pike. Last call. Anybody want to say anything or ask questions before we conclude? And it looks like not. So guys, I hope you've gotten a nugget out of this call that will benefit you in your business. Pray that you have a blessed day, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in today. Take care. Bye-bye.